Hi, my name is Emily Flickinger, and I'm going to talk about my current events project. My documentary is on natural disasters that have happened in the U.S. These storms have happened over the past couple of years. A natural disaster is basically just an event in nature that causes a lot of destruction. So some examples are hurricanes, earthquakes, floods, and snowstorms. The events that I'm going to talk about are the Nevada earthquakes, the droughts in California, the Colorado forest fires, and the snowstorms in New England. Natural disasters can cause a lot of issues for the area which they affect. So that includes destruction of homes and communities and businesses. So a lot of times the government has to step in and help fund rebuilding and efforts to help get the victims back on their feet. Sometimes the national government steps in. The national government has an agency called FEMA, which helps with the victims of natural disasters and helps to rebuild the areas where the natural disasters happened. Now I'm going to talk about Hurricane Sandy. Hurricane Sandy happened on October 22nd through October 31st. And it made landfall on October 29th of 2012. Hurricane Sandy mostly affected New York and New Jersey, but a lot of other states along the East Coast were affected too. Around 8 million residences lost power throughout the East Coast. But in New York alone, 100,000 people lost their homes, and 10,000 people were living in shelters after the storm. This was the second most costliest natural disaster in the U.S., and it cost around $50 billion. In New York City, lost $19 billion just because of the storm and all the destruction that it caused. FEMA gave individuals $1.4 million to help with the destruction that the storm caused, and this was mostly given to people in New York and New Jersey because that was the two states where the hurricane hit the hardest.
This morning I formally declared a state of emergency in anticipation of Hurricane Sandy. We should not underestimate the impact of this storm, and we should not assume the predictions will be wrong.
The most important message that I have for the public right now is please listen to what your state and local officials are saying. When they tell you to evacuate, you need to evacuate.
The East Coast reeling this morning as it absorbs the aftermath of Superstorm Sandy, where economic damages could be in the range of 10 to 20 billion. At least 30 people have been killed in 7 states. More than 8 million homes are without power. And in New York City, the wounds are particularly severe. In the borough of Queens, between 80 to 100 homes caught fire last night and were destroyed. Public transportation, meantime, continues to be closed after extensive flooding. There is no timeline on when that will change. millions are still without power as the East Coast struggles to recover from Superstorm Sandy. At least 55 lives have been claimed so far in the U.S. Here in New York, Manhattan is beginning a difficult recovery process with paralyzed transportation services and power outages. You can just see massive paralysis coming to the city.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the city's just not set up to have everybody who needs to work here drive in.
Now I'm going to talk about the earthquakes that have been happening in Nevada. These earthquakes are located in the northwest corner, so near Oregon and California. And these earthquakes have been happening since July of 2014, and there has been over 800 earthquakes since then. These earthquakes have been at a magnitude of 2 to 5, so they're pretty low, but like a swarm of earthquakes like these could mean that a larger one is coming. Similar instances in this area have happened in 1968 and 2009. So scientists are saying that this is happening because the Sierra Nevadas, which is the mountain range that is right near that area, that they're moving about a half an inch every year. So the earthquakes are happening because the Earth's crust is moving. So since all these earthquakes could mean that a larger one is coming, the people in that area are afraid and they want something to be done. But luckily there's not a lot of people in this area, so not a lot of people will be affected by these earthquakes. In 2008, there was about $1 million in damage, even though there isn't a lot of people in that area. Now I'm going to talk about the drought that has been happening in California. California has been experiencing their fourth consecutive year of extreme drought, and this has been affecting the way that farmers water their crops and the vegetables and the crops that they have been planting and been able to sell. The governor has put in a regulation saying that cities and towns must conserve 25% of the water that they use, and in some towns and cities that number is 35% of the water that they normally would use. People have stopped watering their grass because it uses too much water, and instead they have put in artificial turf grass. And another way that people have been trying to conserve water is taking out their swimming pools because it uses too much water, and they can't use extra water just for whatever they want. If people use over the amount of water that they're allowed to use, they could be fined a very high amount. So people are trying to just conserve as much water as possible. And this drought has put California in a very tight place just because they've been in 4 straight years of drought. Now I'm going to show you a few pictures. They're like before and after pictures of what rivers and areas looked like before the drought, and then what they look like now. So in the pictures you'll see water levels decreasing in rivers and lakes and bodies of water, and you'll see dried up land that's cracked and dried. Now I'm going to talk about the snowstorms that happened in New England. New England got a lot of snow and blizzard-like conditions, so they got a lot of wind and very cold temperatures. Boston got around 101 inches of snow this winter, which is 6 inches shy of of them breaking the record for the most snowfall in one winter. Boston spent $32 million on snow removal, which is a lot more than they normally spend. Boston normally spends $7 million. And a lot of the other cities were affected by this, all the snowstorms. Boston has been trying to find ways to help remove the snow because they had so much snow that it was getting in the way. So some solutions to getting rid of the snow were to dump it in the harbor, but that posed for environmental concerns and problems. Another way is moving snow out to snow farms, which are basically just vacant pieces of land that the government owns, where they would put snow from the city. Another way was to use snow melting machines to quickly melt the snow to get it out of the streets and the sidewalks. And they also tried to find other solutions from the local universities. So they contacted professors from these universities to try to find solutions to help remove the snow. And a lot of other areas were affected, of course, by the snow, but Boston was one of the larger cities that got hit hard this winter. Now I'm going to talk about forest fires. The forest fire that I'm going to talk about was called the Black Forest Fire, and it happened in Colorado. It happened just north of Colorado Springs, and it caused a lot of destruction to that town. There was about 486 homes that were completely destroyed from the fire, and 14,000 acres of land were also destroyed. 2 people died because of the fire, and there was about $85 million in damages from homes and property. The forest fire was not started natural cause, so it wasn't started from like lightning. After the forest fire, they did a lot of investigations to try to figure out how it was caused. Areas in the Midwest and in the West really have to stress the importance of how to contain fires and other activities that could start a forest fire, because it is very dry and there's normally a lot of trees and grasses out in these areas. So they have to create laws and regulations so things like this don't happen as often. So in conclusion to my documentary, natural disasters cause a lot of destruction and problems for the area. They also cost a lot of money to the government and to the people in that area. In a lot of cases, the government has to come up with solutions to help keep the people safe and protected, and also to help with costs and cleanup.